Now let's move on to the next layer. The next layer would be Iron Man. Go to see the RGB. And on a lot of things, we actually rendered out multiple channels, and this sequence that will be provided to you has also different information. Okay, we have diffuse direct. We can have a look at diffuse indirect, emission, and other stuff. Okay, specular direct, specular indirect. Okay, now the render that we made also has different channels. If you remember, we have diffuse direct, which is just lighting, diffuse lighting, and we have the reflection in there. Great, so what I want to do is I want to be able to control the intensity of these things separately. So before we combine them, let's say I want to split one and the other. Now I'm looking at both of them combined, but I want to be able to have a node that just gives me reflection and a node that gives me lighting. So for that, we use an operator called channel copy. And it does exactly that. It basically grabs the information from one channel and copies it to another channel. Most of the time, we just work on the color channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the information from the other layers. I'm going to copy the information from the direct diffuse into color, and then I'll have another channel copy that's going to be copying the direct reflect to the color. Okay, that way everything's going to be on the same channel and we can do these operations. So the first channel copy, I'm going to call it diff from diffuse. Let's have a look at this. Right now I'm not doing anything, so the result is the same. As for the target, as I was saying, I want to bring everything to the color. And as for the source, I want to grab the direct diffuse. So here I am. Even though I'm just looking at the color channel, I'm actually just visualizing the diffuse information. Great. So if you create a copy of this, let's say I'm going to call this one ref for reflection. The only thing you need to change is here on the input, direct reflect. And voila, we have diffuse on one side and reflection on the other side. Now we can control the intensity of these two separately before we actually merge them with this guy. Okay, so let's do that. Let's first combine those two, trying to rearrange this in a way that might make it easier to grasp what's happening. So I have diffuse and reflection. I will want to combine these two with a layer. Just as a side note, you actually add, multiply, and stuff like that, but I'm going to keep things consistent and just keep using layers. So, and the operation here is going to be add. As for the alpha, it's using same as above, but I'm just going to make sure this is using maximum. Just means that it's not going to combine anything. It's just going to grab the higher values from one or the other. Otherwise, we would have, if we were keep adding alpha, then we will have kind of a value that instead of going from 0 to 1, it's going to start going from 0 to 2, and that's kind of weird. So just change this as a precaution. And as you can see, this is exactly the same as this, or it should be. It's not exactly the same, but it should be pretty close. So we have this and this. It's pretty close. And the reason why it's not exactly the same is because we're missing some diffuse indirect as well. We're just working with direct here, but there's some indirect there. But that's fine. That's not going to be much of an issue. But now we have a separate control. Let's say I like the intensity of the diffusion, but I actually want to have more reflection. And one way to do that is by using an HSV, which is basically just going to allow me to color correct this in a simpler way. So I can scale the value of my reflection pass. And let's say I want to scale it by 5 or 10 or something like that. So instead of having this intensity reflection, now I have this intensity reflection, which combined with my diffuse is going to give me this result. And now you're seeing that we do have a lot more control now. Even though my diffuse is still like this, now I have a higher intensity on the reflection, and that's going to give me something much different than the first the original pass. Okay, so a lot of control, and control is what we want. We're kind of control freaks. And having done that, one other thing that we should take into consideration as well is that usually when you have a metallic surface reflecting, that's usually going to be contaminating the tones that you have on the effect. What I mean by that is, think about gold. When you look at a something of gold, you will notice that it tends to be kind of, all the reflections are kind of yellow tinted. And if you would have the equivalent of yellow gold, if you had a red gold, you would also kind of have some tint on the reflection. So if you want to add a bit of red or a bit of yellow to your to the reflections that we have here, then we would need to multiply one thing. We would need to multiply these colors, the colors that of Iron Man's armor. We would need to multiply them by what we have here. So I'm gonna grab a channel copy, and this channel copy I'm just gonna be copying again to my color channel. I want to copy the diffuse direct. Let's have a look at this. No, diffuse direct. Okay. It's kind of dark, so let's add an HSV here. Let's make this much brighter, say 100. Okay, so we have strong colors. And now we can multiply what we have there. We can kind of, if you want to use a multiply, that's fine. So you can multiply one thing with the other. And you'll notice that now we kind of have that kind of yellowish and reddish tint on the reflections. And we could use this instead if you want. Okay, so now we would have something like this. Just a suggestion, not necessary. Usually this element here would have color, but probably the red wouldn't. And even here it would be kind of subtle. So this is an option. You could also kind of reduce the saturation on that just a bit, just so it's not as saturated. Let's say here the saturation, I'm going to say 0.9. That way it's less saturated, so it's not going to be contaminating as much. We have we still have some of the blue there, which is nice. So this is the original, and this is with the multiply. So just in case you think it's something that's interesting, remember that's an option that you can control like that. But for now, I'm going to keep it simpler. Just going to keep adding it like this, and we'll see how this looks. Now we do have a good amount of intensity on the reflections and on the lighting. I think things are looking good. Let's see if we actually just multiply the diffuse here. Let's see what happens here. Okay, that could be interesting. What if we use this instead? Okay, I think I like this combination. So basically what I'm doing is, since the diffuse was based on a white surface, the light that's being reflected is white. Remember, we created a white material for the surface of Iron Man just to grab the light. But since the actual color of the surface is this, we can just multiply one with the other, and that way we have the color that's actually being reflected towards our eyes is a better match to what we have on the surface of Iron Man. Okay, so that might make sense. Maybe even on this case, kind of leave the saturation as is, or just 0.98, something like that. Yeah, I think this looks good. We're just kind of tinting the lighting, but we're not tinting the reflections. And I like that. I think that makes sense. Yeah, all things combined, this should give us a nice result.